The fluorescent lights hum too loud. Not the sound of 60 people moving through a busy bank lobby. Not the woman near the window who stops mid-sentence and looks up. Not the teller whose hands go completely still above her keyboard. Just that low electrical buzz, steady and cold, hanging over the polished marble floors of Crestmark Federal Bank in downtown Phoenix like it has no idea what it just witnessed. Braxton Wynn is still smiling when he drops the two torn halves of the check onto the counter. He leans forward. One hand flat on the marble. One finger extended, pointed directly at the older man's face. Slow. Deliberate. The kind of gesture a man makes when he needs the entire room to understand exactly who holds the power here. "I want you to hear me clearly," Braxton says.
"I want you to hear me clearly. This is a financial institution, not a refugee camp, and if you have $10 to your name, I will personally quit this job."
Has someone ever looked at you and decided who you were before you opened your mouth? Drop the word yes in the comments right now if that has ever happened to you. Also, tell us where you are watching from. And if you are new here, kindly subscribe to this channel. This is where we cook and serve beautiful stories that permeate your soul. Stay with me as we continue. The lobby holds its breath. Not one person in that line speaks. Not one person moves. The kind of silence that falls over a room when something goes wrong in public and everyone is waiting to see if anyone else will be the one to name it. The older man at the counter doesn't flinch. He doesn't look down at the torn paper scattered across the marble in front of him. He doesn't look at the faces watching. He places both hands flat on the counter, wide hands, calloused, steady as the ground beneath the building, and he simply waits. Then he reaches into his backpack. Every eye in that room locks onto his hands at once. He doesn't pull out money. He doesn't pull out his ID. He pulls out a thin manila folder and places it on the counter, slow, even, like a man who has been holding onto it for exactly this moment and no other. Braxton stares at the logo on the front cover. He doesn't recognize it. He should have. That was the moment Crestmark Federal started bleeding, and every single person in that lobby was looking at the wrong man to see it. If you believe people deserve to be treated with dignity no matter what they are wearing, hit subscribe right now. Because what is inside that folder is about to change every life in this building. The check is still in pieces on the counter when Braxton Wynn crosses his arms. He is looking at the folder. His expression stays level, controlled, but something behind his eyes has shifted, just slightly. Not alarm. Not quite. Something closer to the sound of a door you didn't leave open making a noise in the next room. He slides the folder back across the marble without opening it. "Whatever this is," he says, voice dropped low now that the lobby has returned to its murmur, "it doesn't change the policy." But his eyes go back to that logo one more time before he looks away. Braxton Wynn was 22 years old the first time he sat in a parking lot and watched his father sign papers that took 11 years away from him in one afternoon. His father had run an auto repair shop in Tempe, clean books, 0 missed payments, 6 families eating because of what he built. The bank called it an insufficient asset base. The banker shook his father's hand like he was doing him a favor and walked back through the glass door. That night, Braxton sat in that parking lot for 40 minutes and made himself one promise. He would never be the man standing on the wrong side of that counter. He kept it. Community college at night. Finance degree finished in 3 years. 4 cities in 6 years. Aggressive enough to get noticed. Precise enough to get promoted. By 34, he is the youngest regional director in Crestmark Federal's Southwest Division history, a title that required him to outwork and outlast every person who stood between him and that corner office. That climb is real. Every inch of it is earned. But somewhere between the parking lot in Tempe and the corner office in Phoenix, something inside Braxton Wynn changes direction and he never once feels the turn. He stops seeing struggle as something he came from. He starts seeing it as something other people simply choose. He reduces what he calls non-essential foot traffic across 3 branches. He flags accounts that show no return potential. He builds an entire vocabulary around a single operating idea: if you don't look profitable, you don't belong here, and he repeats it to himself so cleanly and so often that it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like wisdom. He has a photo of his 2 daughters in his wallet. He loves them without condition. He just cannot bridge the distance between that love and the man he becomes each morning when he buttons that jacket and walks through those glass doors. This morning, he straightened his cufflinks in the bathroom mirror. He liked what he saw. He is about to stop. Back at the counter, the manila folder is sitting exactly where Ezekiel Morrow left it. Braxton has not opened it. In 48 hours, he will wish he never does. Ezekiel Morrow has been standing in that line for 38 minutes. He gave up his spot twice, once for a woman trying to manage a stroller and a form at the same time, and once for a young man who came in after him and looked like he was running late for something that mattered. Neither of them thanked him. He didn't stand there waiting for it. He is 61 years old. His flannel shirt is faded at the shoulders from sun, not neglect. His boots are cracked leather, resoled twice by the same man in Maricopa who has been doing it for 12 years. His backpack carries no brand name, just a shape worn soft from years of real use. His silver beard needs trimming, but his hands are something else entirely. Wide. Calloused. Built from decades of fixing things other people had already decided were finished. 3 weeks ago, those hands repaired a jammed receipt printer at a diner off I-10 without being asked. The owner pushed cash across the counter. Ezekiel shook his head and asked for coffee instead. Nobody in this lobby knows that. Nobody in this lobby is watching him at all. His wife Odessa died 5 years ago this March. In her last week, her voice had gone soft but her eyes stayed sharp and present. She held his hand with fingers thinner than he had ever felt them, and she said one thing: keep the land whole. 11 acres outside Maricopa that they had cleared and fenced and planted and repaired together over 23 years of early mornings and dry seasons and seasons that were hard in ways that had nothing to do with the weather. She didn't want it divided. She didn't want it sold off by the acre to people who never walked it. She said it the way people say the things they need to know will be honored after they are gone. He promised her. Today is the deadline. The cashier's check in his hand is drawn on an account registered to a company called Margrave Infrastructure. A name that looks unremarkable on paper. A name that means something very specific to the people who operate this bank. They just don't know he's the one holding it. Ezekiel steps to the counter. He removes his cap. He sets the check down flat and he waits. The teller looks at him. Then at the check. Then back at him. Something moves across her face, fast, barely visible, before she pulls her expression back to professional neutral. She reaches for her phone. She calls for a manager. And the man who walks toward Ezekiel Morrow across that lobby has no idea that the decision he is about to make will be the most expensive one of his career. Braxton Wynn adjusts his jacket before he reaches the counter. He reads the situation in 3 seconds. Teller hesitating, older man waiting, a check sitting face up on the marble, and his conclusion arrives before he does. Sir. He addresses Ezekiel without glancing at the check. Without a government-issued photo identification, we cannot process this transaction. That is bank policy. Ezekiel meets his eyes without any change in his expression. My wallet was stolen 9 days ago in Tucson. I have a notarized receipt from the DMV. I have held an account at this branch for 6 years. You can pull it up in the system right now. Braxton doesn't move toward the keyboard. He doesn't look up the account. He looks at the backpack. The worn flannel faded at the shoulders. The cracked leather boots. His eyes sweep across Ezekiel the way a man reads a form he has already decided to deny. I understand. The words carry nothing that resembles understanding. But you might find a community assistance center better equipped to help someone in your current. I'm not in a situation. Ezekiel's voice doesn't shift. Doesn't harden or rise. It lands flat and clear, like water in still air. I am trying to access money that belongs to me. That is beat 1. Braxton turns to the teller beside him. Call compliance. Flag this transaction for review. He says it at full volume. Not because compliance requires it. Because the line behind Ezekiel is listening and he wants every person in it to hear each word. The security guard near the entrance takes a half step forward. 2 customers lower their phones and look up. A woman near the brochure rack moves 1 step back, as if distance will separate her from whatever this becomes. Then, for one moment, it looks like reason might arrive after all. Braxton picks up the check. He turns it over. He examines it the way a man examines something he is genuinely reading. His expression shifts, barely, briefly, and a woman 2 tellers down releases a quiet breath like the worst of this is finished. It is not finished. Braxton sets the check back down and tears it clean in half. The sound crosses the entire lobby. Sharp and absolute. Beat 2. He tears the halves into quarters. He lets the pieces fall onto the marble in front of Ezekiel, slowly, one by one, without hurry. Beat 3. This is a financial institution. His voice carries all the way to the back wall now. Not raised, projected. Every year in that lobby tuned to it without being asked. Not a refugee camp. And if you have $10 to your name, I will personally quit this job before I serve you. The laughter that follows is the worst kind. Scattered. Swallowed quickly. People laughing because they don't know what else their bodies are supposed to do. Ezekiel looks down at the 4 pieces on the marble. Then he raises his eyes to Braxton. Are you refusing service, he says, without completing a formal verification? Quiet. Even. The question lands like a key turning in a lock. Before Braxton can answer, Ezekiel reaches into his backpack, opens the manila folder, and slides it 1 inch across the counter. Braxton looks at the first page. And the certainty he walked across that lobby wearing, polished, practiced, absolute, cracks open for the first time. He doesn't say a word. Which tells the room everything it needs to know. Stay with this story. Because what Braxton is reading right now is only the beginning of what Ezekiel Morrow carried through those glass doors this morning. Damon Sharp is standing 12 feet away when the check tears. He hears the sound. He watches Ezekiel's hands go flat on the marble. He sees the folder open on the counter. And when his eyes find the logo at the top of the first visible page, the air in his chest goes somewhere he cannot immediately locate. He knows that logo. 2 months ago, Braxton assigned him to process dormancy status updates on a batch of institutional accounts, routine work, a Wednesday afternoon of paperwork that he finished before the building emptied. One of those accounts was registered to an entity named Margrave Infrastructure. He remembers the account specifically because the equity positions listed across 6 Arizona-based financial institutions, including Crestmark Federal, were unlike anything he had encountered in his short career. He had to read the summary page 3 times to make sure he was reading the numbers right. He knows exactly what Margrave Infrastructure is. He knows precisely what that folder means. His hand moves, barely, just 1 inch, toward the edge of his desk. 1 step forward. 1 sentence out loud stops all of this right now. Braxton, pull the account before you make a decision. 5 words. His mortgage adjusts in November. His wife Shayla's next prenatal appointment is Thursday. His probationary review is in 11 days, and the last time he questioned one of Braxton's calls, the silence he received in return lasted 3 weeks and felt like a wall with no way through it. He lowers his eyes. He turns back to his screen. He says nothing. The words he does not say sit in his throat like something swallowed the wrong way. Across the lobby, the security guard finds something to study on the floor tiles. The customers in line go back to their phones. The woman near the brochures pushes through the front door and walks out into the Phoenix morning without looking behind her once. Ezekiel Morrow stands at that counter alone. Damon watches from his desk. His hands are completely still. And the thing taking shape in his chest right now, quiet, specific, the exact weight of a choice he did not make, will not leave him for the next 8 months. Back at the counter, Braxton's jaw is tight. The folder is open. His hands are not moving. And in the 11 seconds that follow, 3 things happen inside Crestmark Federal Bank that nobody in this building is prepared for. Drop a comment right now, do you think Damon should have spoken up? And stay locked in, because Chapter 6 is where everything in this building breaks open. Ezekiel Morrow does not raise his voice. That is the part Braxton cannot process. He is standing there with the folder open in front of him and the torn checks scattered across the marble and 60 seconds of public humiliation still ringing off the walls, and the man on the other side of that counter is completely still. Not defeated. Not broken. Still. Braxton pushes the folder back across the marble. Whatever entity this account belongs to, your identification requirement does not change. Ezekiel doesn't touch the folder. He hears something else entirely in that moment. Not Braxton's voice. Older. Softer. Odessa's voice, the way it sounded in that final week when her body had let most things go but her clarity had not moved 1 inch. Don't let anyone shrink you, Zeke. Not for their comfort. Not for your own peace. Not ever. 2 choices sit in front of him as plain as the torn paper on that counter. He can walk out. Absorb this quietly. Drive to Tucson and find another branch and miss the noon deadline and watch Odessa's 11 acres sit in legal limbo while a developer's option clause ticks toward expiration like a clock nobody can stop. Or he can stand here. Risk delay penalties. Risk being escorted out through those glass doors in front of everyone currently watching. Risk the security guard who still has not fully decided which direction his feet are going to move. He looks at the pieces of the torn check one more time. He straightens his spine. One slow, absolute movement. No theater. No announcement. He slides the folder back toward Braxton and places one finger on the top page. I want written documentation of your refusal, he says. Dated. Signed. With the specific policy cited by name. Braxton stares at him. Because only 2 kinds of people ask for that. Lawyers. And people who already know exactly what comes next. 17 days after Ezekiel Morrow walks out of Crestmark Federal with a signed refusal document in his folder, a single email lands in the corporate headquarters inbox in Dallas at 8:14 in the morning. The subject line reads, Formal Institutional Complaint, Margrave Infrastructure Holdings. 3 paragraphs. No threats. No elevated language. Just dates, times, 2 teller names, 1 security guard, and a regional director. Attached, the notarized complaint letter and the signed refusal document with Braxton Wynn's signature across the bottom. Braxton is copied. He forwards it to legal before his first cup of coffee. 1 line, standard nuisance complaint. Advise routine response. He is wrong about what comes next and he will not know it for 11 more days. For auditors arrive from corporate compliance on a Tuesday morning. No announcement. No advance email. They walk through the glass doors at 9 a.m. carrying laptops and request folders and a kind of patient, unhurried focus that means they are not here to find one mistake. They are here to read a pattern. 3 years of transaction records. Service denial logs. Account closure documentation. Foot traffic reduction memos across all 3 Phoenix area branches. The pattern surfaces in 4 days. Low-income account holders at Crestmark Federal's Phoenix branch have been flagged for additional verification at a rate 3 times higher than any comparable regional branch. 61 service refusals in 18 months with no documented policy citation. 29 account closures marked with language like low return profile and non-essential relationship. Nothing in a courtroom. Everything in a boardroom. And 40% of the authorization signatures belong to 1 regional director. Braxton tightens procedures the week the auditors are still on site. He tells his staff it is about protecting institutional integrity. He believes that when he says it. A regional journalist receives an anonymous tip on a Thursday. The story runs that Friday. No names. Just data. The headline reads, Efficiency or Exclusion. Inside Crestmark Federal's Phoenix operation. By Monday morning, Crestmark stock has moved 2.3% in the wrong direction. By Wednesday, the board chairman's office has fielded calls from 3 institutional shareholders. And by Thursday, inside a boardroom in Dallas, someone finally explains to a room of very quiet people exactly who Ezekiel Morrow is. The name on the agenda stops the meeting cold. Braxton Wynn arrives at the Phoenix branch at 8:45 on a Tuesday morning and stops walking the moment he clears the glass doors. Board Chairman Elias Rowan is standing beside the front desk. He is 68 years old. Gray suit. No tie. No assistant behind him. No briefcase. The kind of man who built something that outlasted everyone who tried to take it and has absolutely nothing left to prove to any room he walks into. Standing directly beside him is Ezekiel Morrow. Same flannel. Same cracked leather boots. Same backpack hanging from one shoulder. Same wide, calloused hands resting easy at his sides like they belong exactly where they are. Braxton's brain runs its calculation, the one it always runs, fast and automatic, and arrives at the wrong answer for the very last time. Mr. Rowan. Braxton adjusts his jacket. I wasn't notified about a visit. No, Elias says. You weren't. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't gesture toward his lawyers or pull out a document or set anything on the counter. He simply turns to face the lobby, the morning tellers, Damon Sharp frozen at his desk, the security guard standing 2 feet closer to the door than he was yesterday, for customers who came in early and are no longer looking at their phones. He speaks 6 words. Ezekiel Morrow is a principal equity holder. The color leaves Braxton Wynn's face in one clean wave, like something draining from a container with no bottom. Damon Sharp stands up from his desk. Slowly. Like a man whose legs have decided something his brain hasn't caught up with yet. One of the tellers sets a coffee cup down on the counter without making a sound. Braxton's mouth opens. Closes. Opens again. I had no way of, the identification policy requires. That's correct, Ezekiel says. His voice is the same voice it was 17 days ago. Quiet. Level. It carries the way a bell carries, not loud, just clear, and impossible to not hear once it starts. You had no way of knowing who I was. He takes one step forward. No theater. No performance. That is exactly the problem. The room holds still. If I wasn't Ezekiel Morrow, if I was just a man with a backpack and a temporary ID and a cashier's check for a land deadline, who would you have done this to next? Braxton Wynn stands in the center of that lobby with 60 years of institutional authority behind him and the answer to that question nowhere in his body. The silence that follows is not uncomfortable. It is the sound of a room full of people understanding something at the same time. Braxton whispers it so quietly that only the people closest to him catch it. I thought I was protecting the bank. Nobody responds. Because every person in that lobby already knows, that is not the defense he thinks it is. Elias Rowan offers Braxton Wynn a quiet exit before the morning is over. Private reassignment. Formal written reprimand. No press release. No public record beyond what the auditors have already compiled. Clean and contained, the kind of resolution that banks prefer and that leaves everything exactly as broken as it was before anyone walked through those glass doors. Ezekiel listens to the offer without changing his expression. Then he shakes his head. That fixes one man, he says. It doesn't fix what trained him. He opens the folder one final time and places a second document on the counter beside the first. Not a lawsuit. Not a settlement demand. Not a number with zeros attached to it. A proposal. 4 pages. Typed clean and plain. An independent bias audit across all Crestmark Federal branches, not just Phoenix. Mandatory retraining on service verification protocols built around a single requirement. Complete the verification before you make the decision, every single time, for every single person. A revised policy requiring a written policy citation before any service refusal can be processed. A community oversight board with direct representation from the populations the data shows have been turned away most often. I don't want compensation, Ezekiel says. I want the next man who walks in here with a temporary ID to leave with what belongs to him. That is all I wanted when I walked in. The board agrees within 48 hours. 3 weeks later, Damon Sharp walks into the formal review hearing uninvited. He is still inside his probationary window. His review is 9 days out. Shayla is 11 weeks along, and the November mortgage adjustment is still sitting at the back of his mind like a sound he cannot turn off. He sits down anyway. He tells the panel his name. He tells them exactly what he saw that morning. What he recognized. What he chose not to say, and the specific reasons he used to make that feel acceptable in the moment, and what it has cost him every single day since. His voice breaks once on the word recognized. He does not look away when it does. After the session ends, Ezekiel finds him in the hallway. Damon starts to form an apology. The words are already shaping themselves on his face, but Ezekiel raises one hand. "You came in," Ezekiel says. "When it counted, you moved." A pause. Steady and direct. But the next time you feel yourself reaching for a reason to stay quiet when you already know what's right, hold on to how this felt. That weight you've been carrying. That's what silence costs. Damon doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. 14 months later, Damon Sharp is appointed as Crestmark Federal's first head of client dignity standards, a position that did not exist before an older man in cracked leather boots placed a manila folder on a marble counter and refused to move. He keeps one index card taped to the edge of his monitor. He wrote it himself the night after the hearing. "You already know what's right. The only question is whether you'll move." Braxton Wynn is not fired in front of cameras. There is no press statement with his name in it. No public moment where the weight of what he did lands on him in front of the people he humiliated. He is reassigned to a non-client-facing compliance role in the Dallas office 3 weeks after the board meeting, and he accepts it without a word of pushback. 6 months later, he resigns. His letter is 2 paragraphs long. The second one gets out. It always does. "I was trained to read risk. I was trained to protect what the institution valued. I became precise at both of those things, and I believe that precision made me good at my job. What I was never trained to do, what I never once questioned, was whether the thing I was protecting was worth the cost of who I was excluding. I was not cruel by nature. I was rewarded, consistently and clearly, for behavior that looked like standards and was actually fear wearing a different name. I do not offer that as an excuse. I offer it as the only honest account of what happened that I am capable of giving." The paragraph is screenshot and shared across 3 business publications and 1 national newspaper before the week is out. 140,000 times in 11 days. Not because it absolves him. Because it names something that people who have never worked in a bank recognize immediately in their own lives and their own choices and their own silences. Meanwhile, Ezekiel Morrow processes the land transfer. 9 days late due to the delays at Crestmark Federal, but the developer's option clause expired before the transfer window closed. Odessa's 11 acres outside Maricopa remain intact. Undivided. Exactly as she asked. He drives back on a Tuesday afternoon. The truck has a sound in the engine he needs to look at this weekend. The road out of Phoenix runs flat and copper-colored in the late light. A country station holds for 40 miles and then goes to static, and he leaves it. He parks at the edge of the property and steps out. The irrigation lines he built 8 years ago run parallel along the fence line, catching the last hour of sun in thin, quiet copper threads. The mesquite trees Odessa planted along the western edge are taller than he remembered. He stands there for a moment and takes that in. He is not celebrating. He is not resolving anything out loud. He is just present, on ground that belongs to him, under a sky that does not care what he was wearing when he walked into that bank, beside trees that grew because someone who loved this land believed they would. He reaches down to the base of the fence post and picks up a stone. Smooth and flat. The kind Odessa used to collect and line along the kitchen windowsill because she said they held the heat of the day long after the sun went down. He turns it over in his hand. Then he puts it in his pocket and walks toward the house. Tomorrow there is a well cap to reseal before the cold season arrives. The engine sound needs attention. There is a neighbor 2 properties over who left a message about a tractor that won't start, and he told her he would come by before the end of the week. Tonight, the land is quiet. The land is whole. And the man who walked into Crestmark Federal Bank wearing cracked leather boots and carrying a backpack with no brand name needs nothing from a world that just watched him hold it to account without raising his voice once. The hand you dismiss today may be the one holding tomorrow's deed. If this story moved something in you, if you have ever been looked past, looked through, or looked at and seen as less than what you are, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Every single story on this channel exists for the person who needs to be reminded that dignity does not require an explanation. Subscribe right now and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story that reminds you of that. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else scrolling through needs to read tonight. We will see you in the next one.